Good afternoon, everyone. This is my first reply to the week's discussion. This is Friday. I'm speaking now on Thursday, the 18th of February, and this is the first reply to discussion that I'm going to make. The next lesson goes live tomorrow, and I'm rather hoping, frankly, that there's going to be more reply to the discussion next week, because although the reply to the discussion that I got was pretty good, in fact it was excellent, there weren't that many people who actually replied. And what I'm putting that down to is the fact that the module has only just started. You know, a little bit of hesitation as the thing powered up. I always think that the starter modules is a bit like getting onto an escalator. You stride right up to the machine, and then there's faltering steps as you get on, and then once you get on, it's okay. It's a bit like that with modules. So what are the things which came up from the first week's session? There was a consensus that the navigating between your own personal beliefs and professional practice was always going to be a sort of tricky interface for you to deal with. And some people clearly are bothered about the legal and moral aspects of their professional practice more than others. One correspondent, for instance, said that an increase in the variety of jobs, moving away from the sort of the more serious end to the more medical, the more social end of paramedic work, the greater variety of jobs made people feel more exposed to risk, if you like, and the fact that people have to make more on-the-spot decisions about what happens to patients. The fact that it isn't all defined by protocol. This again gives people a feeling of dissonance in themselves, a feeling that they are exposed in an area where the decisions that you make are always going to be either more or less right. But the nice cozy sensation of making a decision knowing that it's going to be wholly right isn't really possible. And another theme that came up in the reply from correspondence that I got was both from the moral and from the legal aspects, that what people felt inclined to do was to practice defensively. That is to say, to make sure that their end was covered. Because they felt in jeopardy, morally or legally in jeopardy. And one of the sources of discomfort that people found was precisely where defensive activity, making sure that you're safe legally and morally, defensive practice didn't equal morally satisfying practice, if you get what I mean. That people felt that although this was defendable and although they were acting by protocol, it wasn't what they would normally do out of common sense, if you get my drift. Someone put it well when they said that they walked the line between implementing a protocol and doing what their gut feelings told them was the most appropriate action to do. In our day-to-day lives, we don't live by protocols. In our day-to-day lives, we go by what we feel intuitively is the correct thing to do. And being driven off that territory and into protocols, a number of correspondents mentioned this as an area of disquiet. One of the correspondents said that they would like their work to be less protocol driven and more guideline driven. I would have been very interested to know what they thought the distinction was between protocols and guidelines, but nothing came up. I know what I think that this person probably meant, but I'm not sure it was entirely clear from the contribution that I received. Another excellent point that somebody made, really, this had never occurred to me. When I asked if things were becoming legally trickier, they said that one of the difficulties of being a paramedic was working in areas where the the work of the paramedic is driven by different protocols or by different guidelines. And one of the things that he suggested kept him awake at night was the possibility that this person would end up in a coroner's court having acted on one protocol or one guideline and been in an area where they practice by another protocol and another guideline. Do you know what? That thought had never even occurred to me, but I don't know why either. But this must be your lives. I mean, if you work in an intensive care unit, for instance, there's no question that, of what guidelines and what principles you're working on, because you're a static organisation. But an ambulance can be like a travelling intensive care unit, and because you've drifted out of your district and into another, there may be an entirely different system of rules, and I don't know how you keep this in your head, as a matter of fact. I can't even remember my kids' birthdays, never mind all this stuff. The other area of increased jeopardy that someone drew attention to was the rise in no-win, no-fee legal services, where a person doesn't have to lay any money out for them to start litigation. Yeah, okay, I can understand that. But when I asked a group when I met face-to-face with a group of paramedics the other day, how many people they knew had ended up on the wrong end of a negligence charge or any type of criminal or civil action arising out of their day-to-day work, the answer was precisely zero. And the question I want you to consider, just consider, I'm not saying accept, I said just consider, is that maybe our fear of legal action is rather exaggerated. I mean, I know we're told that there is the potential of legal action, but the number of times that this actually happens to somebody that we know is vanishingly small. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take account of it. I'm not saying that it isn't an important consideration. It's just that I wonder if for all healthcare professionals, fear of litigation is somewhat exaggerated. Another theme that came out in the correspondence was that for all ethical and legal stuff, all the correspondents had took the view that basic training very poorly prepared them for ethical and moral dilemmas which might be faced in practice, and the sort of thinking that people have traditionally brought to thinking about moral disquiet in healthcare work. Well, you know, all I can say to you is that other professions have come down this route. Nursing was like this not long ago. ODP practice was like this not long ago. All I can say to you is that perhaps an interest in morality and an interest in the legalities of healthcare are part of the professionalisation process that this course actually involves. I can guarantee to you this, that if you go on a multidisciplinary course from now on, both in health among ODPs or in multidisciplinary courses, Master of Science degrees, that sort of thing aimed at healthcare workers, you will not be able from now on to avoid the prospect of talking about ethics and law, because they've come up the agenda to such an extent, and that in our day they are pretty much unavoidable. So, thank you for the ones that sent in some correspondence this week. Next week, the rest of you had better have your pens out. The next lesson goes up tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning, Friday the 19th of February, and it's about negligence. It's about what the person needs to show that you've been negligent in their regard. So, mind how you go.